A duke's fingers trembled as she reached for the first page. The words blurred before her eyes. She paused, then asked softly, "And you won't be involved at all?" Harrison's face remained unreadable. "That's not part of the arrangement." A silence settled between them. A duke looked down again, her mind swirling with doubts. She wasn't just agreeing to bear a child. She was agreeing to walk away, to give a piece of herself to a man who refused to feel anything. Yet, this was the opportunity she had prayed for on those nights when hunger gnawed at her and the world turned its back. She had nothing left to lose. "I understand," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Harrison gave a small nod. "Once you sign, arrangements will begin immediately." Her hand hovered over the paper for a moment longer. Then she picked up the pen and signed. She didn't look up. She couldn't. Not yet. The next few weeks passed in quiet efficiency. A duke was moved into a private residence, guarded and luxurious. She was given everything: clothes, food, medical attention, but rarely saw Harrison. Their interactions were brief, professional. He treated the entire situation like a business transaction, just as he said he would. But life doesn't always follow rules. A duke began to feel changes, first in her body, then in her heart. She would find herself thinking of Harrison, wondering who he was when he wasn't behind the cold mask of power. One evening, while sitting by the window, she caught a glimpse of him standing outside, speaking on the phone. The sun hit his face just right, and for the first time, she saw the weariness in his eyes. Not power. Not control. Just a man. Alone. Something shifted in her. And for Harrison, it started with a sound, a soft laugh echoing down the hall one morning. He followed it, only to find a duke watching an old cartoon, completely absorbed. For a moment, he didn't see the girl from the streets. He saw a woman full of light in a place that had long forgotten joy. He said nothing. But that night, he couldn't sleep. She began asking questions. Not about the contract, but about him, his past, his parents, the things he used to dream about. At first, he answered briefly. Then, slowly, he began to open up. A duke didn't try to impress him. She didn't flatter him. She simply listened. And Harrison, the man who had built empires without ever needing anyone, found himself looking forward to their conversations. One rainy evening, a duke fell ill. The doctors were quick to respond, but Harrison stayed by her side the entire time. When she opened her eyes to find him holding her hand, something unspoken passed between them. The lines began to blur. She wasn't just carrying his child anymore. She had become a part of his life in ways neither of them expected. But Harrison was a man bound by logic and control. Emotions, to him, were liabilities. He began to withdraw, creating distance where there had been warmth. It hurt a duke more than she was willing to admit. Then came the day of the delivery. A healthy baby boy. The moment a duke held him, tears rolled down her cheeks. She whispered promises into his tiny ears, her heart breaking at the thought of leaving him behind. Harrison stood a few feet away, staring at the child. Something inside him stirred. It wasn't pride. It wasn't success. It was something much deeper, something he had never let himself feel. He reached out, gently touching his son's tiny hand. The baby gripped his finger, and in that instant, Harrison knew. This wasn't just a deal. This was his son. And the woman in that bed, she wasn't just a surrogate. She was the one who had unknowingly healed parts of him he didn't realize were broken. A duke looked up at him, tears still in her eyes. "You said no attachments," she whispered. "I was wrong," Harrison replied, voice thick with emotion. "About everything." A duke clenched her fists, her body trembling as another wave of pain crashed through her. She could barely hold on. Harrison stood by her, gripping her hand, his eyes never leaving hers. He had never felt this helpless, powerless in a room full of professionals, unable to do anything but be present. Then it happened, a sharp, piercing cry. The room fell silent for a moment as the baby's voice echoed. A nurse quickly held up the newborn, red-faced, squirming, very much alive. Harrison exhaled deeply, only now realizing he'd been holding his breath. His gaze softened as he looked at the child, his child. A Duke collapsed back onto the pillows, exhausted, her skin damp with sweat. Her grip loosened, but her eyes searched for him, needing to know he was still there. "I'm here," he whispered, gently brushing her damp hair from her face. The doctors moved quickly. One of them glanced between a Duke and Harrison before stepping forward. There was a hesitation in his tone, almost guarded. "Mr. Obiora," the doctor began carefully. Harrison turned, alert. "There were minor complications," the doctor continued, choosing his words with care. "We've stabilized both mother and child, but we'll need to monitor closely over the next 24 hours. A Duke stirred, trying to sit up. "The baby, is he okay?" Harrison moved closer, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "He's strong, just like you." A Duke's eyes filled with tears, fatigue, fear, and something else. Something deeper. She wasn't sure if it was relief or the beginning of something entirely new. Later, when the room was quiet and the nurses had left, Harrison stood by the crib. The baby lay wrapped in a soft blue blanket, his tiny hands occasionally twitching. He looked so fragile, yet full of life. A Duke watched Harrison from the bed, her voice soft and raw. "What are you thinking?" He didn't turn. "I thought this would be easy. A transaction. Clean. But nothing about this feels that way now." She waited, unsure if he would say more. He finally turned to face her. "When you called me, when I heard your voice in pain, something inside me shifted. I don't know what it means. I just know I couldn't breathe until I saw you." A Duke looked down at her hands. "I didn't know who else to call." "You called me," he said quietly, walking over to sit beside her. Silence fell again, but it wasn't heavy. It was thoughtful. After a moment, a Duke spoke again, barely above a whisper. "What now?" Harrison didn't answer immediately. His gaze drifted to the sleeping baby, then back to her. "Now, we figure this out. Together. If you'll let me." A Duke's heart pounded. She had entered this arrangement with nothing. No hope, no trust. Just survival. But somewhere between the silence and the pain, between the contracts and cold conversations, something unexpected had taken root. She reached out and placed her hand over his. It was small, that gesture, but in it was forgiveness, courage, and the beginning of something neither of them had planned for. Together, they looked at their son, two broken people who never meant to become a family. But did not Harrison's stomach tightened, something was wrong. The room was too quiet. The baby's cries had slowed, but an unbearable weight hung in the air. The doctor didn't speak at first. His eyes shifted between Harrison and the newborn. Then, carefully, he said, "Mr. Obiora, the child, his hair." Harrison's chest constricted. "What about it?" A Duke turned her head weakly toward the doctor. Then she saw it. Her breath caught in her throat. The baby's hair wasn't black. It wasn't even dark brown. It was reddish brown, almost golden under the harsh hospital lights. Harrison stepped closer, his face unreadable. "That's impossible," he said quietly. A Duke looked at him, then at the child. Panic filled her eyes. "I want a DNA test," Harrison cut in, his voice sharp and cold. A Duke froze. The doctor hesitated. Sir, these things. Do it, Harrison snapped, eyes fixed on the baby even as his mind raced. The doctor nodded quickly and left. The silence that followed was suffocating. A Duke turned her face away, blinking rapidly. Harrison stood motionless, fists clenched at his sides. Time passed slowly. Machines beeped, nurses whispered in the distance, and babies cried softly down the hall. A Duke stared at the ceiling in silence. Harrison sat unmoving in the corner. Then the door opened. The doctor walked in, holding a file. His face was composed, but the tight grip on the papers betrayed his tension. Harrison stood. Well. The doctor cleared his throat. Mr. Obiora, the child is yours. A Duke closed her eyes. Relief flooded her, but Harrison didn't move. There's a rare genetic trait, the doctor continued. A recessive gene that affects hair color. It can skip generations. Someone in your lineage must have had it. Silence stretched between them. Harrison's hands slowly relaxed. He glanced at a Duke, then at the child, his son. But even with the truth confirmed, something inside him felt different, distant. A Duke watched him carefully. The doctor had spoken. The results were clear. The child was his. But instead of coming closer, instead of reaching for his son, Harrison turned and walked out. The tears came before she could stop them. So this was it. He had wanted an heir. He had paid for one. And now, with the baby finally here, he was walking away. She looked down at the child in her arms. So small, so peaceful. Her heart broke, not for herself, but for the baby. She had expected Harrison to be cold. She had expected distance. But she hadn't expected him to leave. Her throat tightened. He'll come back, she whispered, gently rocking the baby. But even as she said it, doubt crept in. Would he? Harrison sat in his car, every muscle tense. His thoughts were scattered. He had built his entire life around control, emotionless decisions, clear goals. But now there was a child, his child. And a Duke. Everything had shifted. He had walked out because staying had felt dangerous. The way a Duke had looked at him, the way the baby's tiny hand had reached out, it had stirred something inside him. And that frightened him more than anything ever had. He closed his eyes, breathing deeply. Control had always been his comfort. Now, it felt like a distant memory. For the first time, he didn't know what came next. And that terrified him. Back in the hospital room, a Duke sat quietly, rocking the baby. The night was still, but her thoughts weren't. She told herself not to hope, that Harrison was gone for good. Then the door creaked open. She turned, and there he was, standing in the doorway. His face unreadable. They said nothing at first. Then he stepped inside, slow and deliberate. I shouldn't have left, he said. A Duke let out a tired, dry laugh. But you did. His jaw tightened. I didn't know how to handle it. She looked up at him, truly seeing him. No, she said gently. You didn't know how to handle feeling something. The room went quiet again. Harrison's gaze shifted to the baby. His son. This time, he didn't walk away. Days later, a Duke and the baby were discharged from the hospital. Harrison had arranged everything: medical care, transport, the penthouse. It was all logical, practical. But that wasn't why he did it. He sat in his office now, a business report open in front of him, untouched. His mind wasn't on the numbers. It was with them. He leaned back, staring at the ceiling. Something had changed. Something he hadn't planned for. For years, He had made sure no one got close. Even with a duke, he had told himself it was just a transaction. A contract. But now he couldn't stop thinking about the way she had looked at him that night, the honesty in her voice, the strength in her eyes. She saw him. The real him. And that terrified him. But more terrifying was the child. His son. A calm, peaceful little boy who already had a grip on his heart. A duke believed it was over. But Harrison had already made up his mind. The deal had changed. He stood, grabbed his keys, and left the office. It was time to go home. In the penthouse, a duke packed her last set of clothes into a small suitcase. She had fulfilled her end of the deal. The contract was clear. The baby was here. Her job was done. She heard the door open behind her. She didn't need to turn to know it was him. "You're leaving," Harrison said quietly. A duke closed the suitcase. "You gave me a contract. I honored it." There was silence. Then a long breath. "I don't want an heir," Harrison said. A duke froze. "I want my son." His voice was calm now. Then he added, "I want you." Her heart beat faster. Slowly, she turned around. There was no contract anymore. No conditions. Just them. And this time, Harrison wasn't walking away. Sometimes, love finds you when you least expect it. Harrison never believed in love, until now. He hadn't just found a child. He had found a family. If this story moved you, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another powerful story. Leave your thoughts in the comments. I'll be reading and replying. And please share this story with others so we can keep bringing you more heartwarming tales. Thank you for watching.